Good morning, everyone. This is Teacher Hazetee. Hello, Baras National High School, and thank you for inviting me to give you a talk on Microsoft Teams. But a few reminders first before we head over to our training proper. First up, you have to mute your microphone when others are speaking so as to decrease the background noise, and you can unmute your microphone if you're going to ask a question. Second, you can set up your audio and check all your peripherals before joining the call. So you can see that by accessing the three dots icon highlighted here at the lower pane of the meeting controls. So you can also choose which are your device settings for this meeting. You can also set up your device settings and choose which audio devices and speakers should work for this meeting. You can also adjust the microphone and audio volume for this call. Moreover, you can check out our meeting chat and connect with other participants in this conference call. And with that, without further ado, let me head you over to our talk about the better normal digital transformation with Microsoft Teams. I'm Hazel Angeline E. Tesoro, teacher at Baras Senior High School, Microsoft Education Ambassador, Microsoft Innovative Educator Master Trainer, Certified Microsoft Office Specialist for PowerPoint, and Google Certified Educator Level 1. So let's move on. This training is brought to you by Microsoft Education, empowering every student to create the world of tomorrow. So Microsoft for Education aims for us to have better learning outcomes and to save teachers time, of course, and for us to have easy to manage devices. This is to remind everyone that I am not in any way selling Microsoft products. I'm only trained by Microsoft to teach and to empower teachers and learners in using technology for education. So with that, let's head you over to our meeting norms for today. First, you have to be present. Second is to participate. And third is to ask questions. So I will be very happy to entertain questions via the chat box, or you may send them over to Ma'am Arlene Robles, or you may comment directly on my YouTube video. Moving on, let's have an intro about Microsoft Teams. This is an overview of what the Microsoft Teams window looks like. So there you have it. You may install the Microsoft Teams on your device if you don't have it yet. It's available for Mac OS. It's also available for Windows, for Android, and for iOS. So with Microsoft Teams, you can be notified of the activities that your students are doing inside the team or inside the channels. You can also tweak the settings and controls so that these match your preferences for your specific class. Also, you can set assignments through Microsoft Teams, and your students can view when it is due, and your students can also be reminded when they have to turn in their assignments. So how do you host or attend a meeting via Microsoft Teams? So you can join a meeting by selecting the meeting, then choosing join if that is an existing meeting already that is scheduled via the Outlook calendar. Okay, Outlook calendar is the calendar app by Microsoft. So second step or second way you can host or attend a meeting in Microsoft Teams is you can click the notification and choose join. So moving on. So what if the meeting is not scheduled in a calendar and you're not invited to join a meeting? Well, you can set up a meeting, an impromptu meeting on your own by clicking Meet Now. So you can find more training resources at aka.mssmb Meet Now, or you can just look for training videos or tutorial videos on setting up a meeting and how to have an impromptu meeting on Microsoft Education's YouTube channel. You can also schedule a meeting and invite attendees by creating an event in the calendar within Microsoft Teams itself, and that automatically integrates with Outlook Calendar, the official calendar app by Microsoft. So now I'm going to teach you effective ways to use channels. What are channels? Channels are a part of Microsoft Teams, And this is where you can effectively encourage participation and independence among students, which leads to a more peaceful virtual environment. Using channels within Microsoft Teams effectively can be a game changer for a learning environment. While there are many ways to organize teams through channels, this session will highlight how to effectively use channels to increase engagement and organization. And with that, in this section, we'll be studying the types of channels and settings, what are general channels, what are standard channels, and what are private channels. So first up, you have to learn and understand the differences in the types of Teams channels. You have to be able to effectively organize Teams channels for success, and you have to apply Teams channel settings to best manage a classroom. So channels are of three types. We have general, we have standard, and private channels. So let's move on first to what a general channel is. A general channel is literally the home base of your Microsoft Teams. This allows teacher-only posts. This allows assignments and, of course, grades. And here we can see the commonly used resources widely available for all students because that's general. You can host a general channel for your entire school, by the way. So here is a sample of a general channel as shown on screen. Whereas a standard channel is where less is more. This is more of a daily workspace where visuals and numbers allow simple organization, and this is organized based on the age of learners. Here are samples of standard channels. So as you can see, you can customize the channel names based on how you want it. You can even add emojis so that you can easily see the channels based on symbols and that you won't have a hard time locating them. Whereas private channels is more like the educator's office. This is more of a private type of a room where there can be small group stations or breakout sessions. You can also use this as a remediation room to protect the privacy of those students who are undergoing interventions and remediations. These are also project-based where students can focus on one project at a time rather than creating large channels where a lot of people are in. So here are samples of private channels. There. So again, a review of the channel types. We have general, standard, and private. So you can use channels actually to organize content. Channels organize content as files are added to the channels appear in the channels files tab. So you can easily find them in the files tab. Standard channels are accessible by any person in the team. Remember that a team is larger than a channel. Private channels, on the other hand, are only accessible to those added to that channel by the teacher. Any person added to a team cannot access the private channels unless the teacher or the owner of that team adds that person to the private channel. So here are the settings of the general channel just to show you. So you can set the permissions, whether anyone can post messages, whether anyone can post show alert, that posting will notify everyone, or if only owners can post messages. So you can see here that you and only moderators can reply, and you can tweak that settings whenever you want. Moving on to the standard channel settings. So this is in contrast with the general channel where it is accessible to everyone. You can set the permissions whether there can be channel moderation, or everyone can start a new post, or everyone except guests can start a new post. You can see also that you can view the analytics and analyze the insights whether your channel performs well. Moving on to the settings in a private channel. So let's zoom it in because the font size is quite small. So we can see here that the Teams is named Mrs. Lanham's class, whereas the private channel is named or is titled Mrs. Lanham's office. So that is quite private than a class, right? So you can set member permissions. You can change it. You can allow members to create, update, and remove tabs. You can set whether owners can delete all messages. You can give members the option to delete their messages and give members the option to edit their messages. So that's quite inclusive and accessible rather than restricting people to edit and to delete their messages. What if a student sends a message by mistake or accidentally presses the enter key? You can also choose whether a channel mention is allowed. You can give members the option to mention a channel or to mention a channel name. This will notify everyone who's shown in the mentioned channel in their channel lists. Unlike when we mention someone in Facebook Messenger, that notifies only one person. But here, if you allow mentioning of a specific channel, you can notify everyone, every member of that entire channel. So another fun stuff, this is tagged as educator's choice. You can allow emoji, memes, GIFs, or stickers if you're that creative teacher or if you are a fan of these digital visual ways on how we can communicate in the virtual world. So you can enable GIF or GIF if that's how it's called. You can filter out inappropriate content using one of the settings below. So here, strict filtering is selected. So you can filter out those GIFs that are not appropriate for learners and are not meant to educate them. You can also filter out emojis that have different meanings, or you can also filter out emojis that have malicious content that are attached to them, such as an eggplant emoji or a peach emoji or the water droplets emoji, something like that. So you can also enable stickers and memes and allow memes to be uploaded that are custom made by your students. So now that you learned already how you can manage the teams by being oriented with the channel types, now we move on to organizational strategies in Microsoft Teams. So how can you be so sure that you as a teacher can organize content and you can help also your students to organize the content that they create and the content that they submit to you within Microsoft Teams? Because Microsoft Teams is also a tool that can serve as a learning management system. Here are the learning targets for this section. You can learn how to leverage the power of Microsoft 365, including Microsoft Teams, to help organize instructional content. And you can learn a variety of strategies that can be used to organize content and delivery with Microsoft Teams. So these are the organization tools that you can find within Microsoft Teams. First, OneDrive is already integrated within Microsoft Teams. You can use the Files tab to show all the files that you have access to. You no longer need to go outside of Teams to find a file because you can store files within the Teams, and you can make sure that you and your students can just go to one place to find and locate the files that you need. Here in this pane, you can check out the type of file, whether it's a OneNote notebook, whether it's a PDF file, whether it's a Word document, and so much more. You can also check out class files and collaboration, and this can be stored in one folder which is tagged as class materials. You can upload pretty much any kind of content within Microsoft Teams. You can add a video, you can add a document, you can add a spreadsheet, a presentation, images, and a whole lot more. You can also assign assignments, and that shows in your students' calendar, and with that they can be reminded of their pending work and work that they haven't submitted yet. So calendars can organize Teams meetings and appointments, which syncs with Outlook. So all these Microsoft apps are already integrated with each other. Also, apart from calendar appointments, whether those appointments have Microsoft Teams integrated in them, you can also remind students of the assignments that are due. The assignment tab shows all the assignments that are posted across all the teams that you created for your classes. Other organizational strategies in teams include the following. So we know that organization and preparation to instruction. So you have to ask yourself these questions. What do these key elements look like in a classroom and in an online environment? Why are organization and preparation vitally important in an online environment? You can answer these questions by keying in your comments to my YouTube video. So Microsoft Teams introduces smart channels. Customize the channel names by adding emojis for young leaders and mature scholars. As you can see, there is a difference between the channels for little learners, as the channel names have emojis in them. We also have young leaders or young learners, and we have one for mature scholars. Here are other additional organizational strategies that you can set for your students. You can set the permission whether the general channel as the teacher or the announcement space, where all of the announcement will only come from you as a teacher. Also, you can press permissions who needs to reply to the certain posts or announcements that you create. You can also mute students if you don't want them to reply, or you can also set permissions for the class materials file. Second, you can format posts. You can set post permissions. You can create packaged posts and post content across all teams and across all channels that you hold for your classes. You can also add resources and links within your posts. Also, you can set clarity of expectations. You can start off your posts with the learner will blah blah blah, and then you can set ease of access. You can streamline instructions by posting one instruction only, and you can set that across all teams with just one click. You can also set designated areas for support. You can add a channel for, say, to serve as a help center only, or where students can assist each other, like what we are planning for the Tulong Dunong program, where students can act as a help center agent for students who need help and assistance with, digital learning and navigating the Microsoft Teams platform. So you can also set a plan B or a second plan whether if ever your first plan didn't work out perfectly. You can also keep it accessible and simple. You can utilize accessibility features. You can set how many programs will be used and set if there will be a simpler alternative to what you are providing your students. Of course, let them master the content and the platform and then move on. So now that you know already how to organize your content using Microsoft Teams, and you already know as well how to manage the different kinds of channels. So now we move on to how to monitor students' progress using Microsoft Teams. Because Microsoft Teams can also serve as a learning management system. So here in this section, you can learn how to leverage the power of Microsoft 365 products to monitor student progress in Microsoft Teams. You can also learn a variety of strategies that can be used to evaluate assignments and assessments in Teams with established learning objectives. And with that, here is a sample matrix on how to transform traditional to digital learning, and that is making the connection. So how can you make that connection from traditional to digital with the use of Microsoft Teams? First up, you have to identify current core instructional practices that you are already using in the classroom. So it's very important that you anchor your practices now to what you have been using this previous year, so that you will not lose your identity, diba? It's like we all have this teaching identity, and that's what makes us unique from each other as teachers, and that's what students use to identify us from each other. Like, si ma'am ganito, bawal kang mag-notes sa notebook mo habang nagtuturo siya. You have to listen to her attentively before you write notes. Diba? Yung mga teaching styles natin. Because if students have their learning styles, we teachers have our teaching styles as well, right? So you also have to identify digital alternatives that are comparable with initial design objectives. So we have the formative, summative, individualized, and the just-in-time assessments, yung bigla lang, okay? So here is a matrix where we can see the type of assignment or assessment, and then second column shows the traditional method or the physical classroom, yung ginagamit na natin before, way before the pandemic. We also have now yung digital transformation. How are we going to create that connection from the one we have been using before, and how are we going to practice that still given the situation na most of us are having modular learning and we are being open now nga dun sa possibility of online teaching. Okay, so sa first column ayan, we have formative assessment. Now, the traditional method for that, you can print out entrance or exit tickets. You can also check for understanding, as in yung face-to-face naman, di ba? And feedback cycle, which is very easy if face-to-face lang talaga yung interactions. But how are we going to transform that into the digital style? So we can use Microsoft Forms to host your entrance and exit tickets, like what I have used for my previous class in reading and writing. Nitong nung nag-flexible learning options, I hosted an exit ticket for my students kasi I've been printing out yung normal na exit ticket and merong emojis pa na ganyan for 2 school years, and then yung previous lang, saka lang ako nag-Microsoft Forms, and that's nice. So, hindi man ganun kalaki yung turnout, unlike sa face-to-face, at least meron akong ilang students who took time and effort to answer that form, and with that, you can be reminded of how great you are as a teacher and ano pa yung points of improvement, so that sa next time that you teach that subject, you won't repeat the same I'm not calling it malpractices, but yung practices that did not work out masyado dun sa students natin. So, yon. You can be better with the use of entrance and exit tickets. So, you can also digitally transform your classroom by using collaborative Microsoft 365 documents. You can collaborate across all. Actually, you can collaborate using OneNote, using Sway, Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel, name it. Okay? Microsoft allows you to digitally connect with your students and your co-teachers as well. So, yung feedback cycle natin, usual, you can digitally transform that using Microsoft Teams meeting. So, for the second type of assessment or assignment, there's the summative type. So, for the traditional method, we have been using test or quiz or performance-based assessment. But how do we transform that digitally? We can create Microsoft Forms for a test or quiz, just like how we do it using Google Forms, yung tinuro namin ni Sir Paulmar last time. Sa special science teachers and ALS and special education teachers nung December 1. Okay, so you can also create a video recording, and you can use the video recording platform Flipgrid. Flipgrid is a nice tool for video recording because 1, you can protect the privacy of your students, and 2, it has cute animations and emojis and graphics that you can make use of to engage student to learn and to amplify student voice. So for that, we have another type of assignment or assessment. We have the individualized type, which are accommodations and differentiation. So how do we digitally transform that? By using Microsoft Teams or the Microsoft Office apps or the Microsoft 365 apps. So you can use Microsoft learning tools like what I taught you nung 2019. That was INSET natin nung 2019. Summer yon, summer INSET natin, where I taught you about the Microsoft learning tools. And to give you a recap, di ba, we studied about Microsoft Translator. Yung pag tinapat mo siya sa foreign text, di ba, you can be provided with real-time translation. I also taught you about Microsoft Office Lens, where you can transform your simple smartphone into a mobile scanner. I also taught you about Microsoft Dictate. That is Microsoft speech-to-text, speech recognition, di ba? To lessen the time that you use on your keyboard and just speak instead, di ba? And nagko-convert na yung spoken words mo into written language, di ba? And I also taught you about
1,000 years later.
So, I also taught you about the immersive reader where you can help students that are struggling from dyslexia and other visual impairments. Ayan. So, ito naman yung kabaliktaran ng dictate here. You can have text to speech naman. This one is the tool that I use for my demo nung nag-simulation tayo sa remedial reading. In that immersive reader, we had line focus and picture dictionary, which can make your learning more accessible. And also, I taught you about that learning tool for the blind. I just forgot that tool. Okay, Google, Microsoft tool or Microsoft app for the blind.
According to Forbes, launched in July 2017 by Microsoft for people with impaired sight.
Ayun, so this is the app. I looked it up. So that's Seeing AI, diba? So that time when I taught you about Seeing AI, the app is not yet available for Android users. So Seeing AI can help the blind or those who have visual impairment to see what's in front of the camera. Ayan. So to help them then to navigate the real world. So I'm not so sure if it's already available on Android, but you can just check it out for yourself. So moving on, we have, apart from the Microsoft Learning Tools, you can post an assignment and assign that to each student that you have in a certain channel. You can also have private channels like what I mentioned earlier, so that the students who need help and their reputation, of course, will not get exposed to those who are not meant to know about their situation. This is to avoid bullies as well. So the fourth type is the just-in-time assignment or assessment. So for the traditional method, we have Q&A, we have feedback cycle, and probing. So to transform that digitally, we can create a Teams meeting. We can also use Microsoft collaborative tools or documents and assignment feedback. Later on, I'll show you how to give assignment feedback to your students. So now that we know already how to create that connection from the traditional to the digital classroom, now we'll learn more about Microsoft Teams assignments. So first up, you can provide a rubric for your students so that they can know how they will be graded. So this is available within the assignment itself. The teacher can actually reuse or download and share the rubric, and students can access the rubric at any time. You can also review student work. You can keep track of work progress even if a grade is not needed using assignments, and you can check whether which ones are already turned in, which ones are viewed, and which ones were returned. So this is an example of a teacher feedback during grading that I've been telling you about. So the assignment is called The Grapes of Wrath: Synthesis and Reflections. Real-time feedback and collaboration on a document allows for coaching and demonstration. It also shortens the feedback cycle for students and teachers, as you can save time, diba? And you can just write your comments as you read their submissions. So aside from writing comments, you can also directly add in the points and then return that assignment for students to see. So for the assignment categories, we also have here tips on how to organize assignments by using categories for easy filtering. So you can actually assign different categories to a certain assignment, and that would allow you to find that assignment easier, more easily, than just assigning one tag for that assignment. So this is like the tags rin that we use for social media, diba? So that we can harvest all related posts on that topic, and so we can follow content that we want to see by using that hashtag. So yun, that's the use of tags actually. Moving on, now that you know already how to organize assignments and to manage assignments using Microsoft Teams, now we will learn how to offer effective feedback to your students using Microsoft Teams. The learning targets for this section is for you to know about the feedback and student success, Teams tools that can be used for feedback, and best practices in feedback and feedbacking tools. Tatakpan na ng picture. Okay. So first, before we know about the feedback tools in Microsoft Teams, you have to know that feedback is one of the top 10 influencers of student achievement. And sa generation natin ngayon, I learned from one of the videos that I used, and I have watched din for the subject that I teach, oral communication in context, iba ang generation noon and generation ngayon in terms of feedback. Yung younger generation, like starting from the millennials down to Gen Z, they love feedback. They love to hear which parts of their work they need to improve. And we also have learners who even ask us privately, di ba, sa Facebook Messenger na, ma'am, tama po ba lahat ng ginawa ko? Ma'am, kumpleto po ba lahat ng pinasa ko? So these are the types of learners that we have today. And the feedback that they want is real time as much as possible. They don't like waiting for a long time before they receive the feedback. Also, according to a research by John Hazetee, learners that receive high quality of feedback from their instructor achieve more and show growth in learning and skill development. So the source for this is Feedback in School by John Hazetee. So, questions that you have to ask yourself before providing feedback: does your feedback focus feedback on the task and not the learner? Does your feedback provided an elaborated feedback or present elaborated feedback in manageable units? Is your feedback specific and clear with feedback messages? Is it simple as possible but no simpler, 'di ba? So you have to provide feedback that is simple but no simpler, kasi pag sobrang simple baka hindi naman mag-gets ng student what are you really trying to mean. Does your feedback reduce uncertainty between and o baka lalo lang nalabuan si student? Does your feedback give unbiased objective feedback, written or via computer? Does your feedback promote a learning goal orientation via the feedback process? And do you provide feedback after learners have attempted already a solution? O baka nag-feedback ka kaagad without them having to explore muna what are the options available, baka nag-spoon feed ka na agad when you have mistaken that as feedback. So you have to take a moment to think about the quality of the feedback that you're giving your students, and you can talk them through by using these points. So you also have to know what's the difference between praise and feedback, diba? And what's also the difference between spoon feeding and feedback. So according to John Hazetee, it is critical that educators recognize the difference between feedback and praise. Praise is telling a student, good job. And feedback is letting the learner know why they were successful or what needs to be corrected. So by just reading this quote from John Hazetee, we can conclude that praise is superficial, whereas yung feedback is telling the hows and whys, diba? Hows and whys of why you gave the student the praise. So you can set participants up to reflect on the difference between praise and feedback so that klaro na sa kanila right then and there what to expect from you as a teacher. So, we have the reflection question number 1. Reflect on a time that you have given praise when you meant to give feedback, na nagkamali ka, di ba? So, it's not, it's not a crime to admit to ourselves na, nagkamali pala ako nung time na yun. I gave praise instead of giving the student feedback. So, yon. It's just a matter of being honest to ourselves, di ba? For us to improve our craft in teaching. So, yon. So, you can share your responses via the comment section in this YouTube video, or if you want, you can just share your responses among Baras National High School teachers. So, you can also try this out and reflect on this. Ayan, so the task is, students were asked to create name cards. Okay, so like what we do sa first day of teaching natin, pag hindi pa natin kilala si student, create name tags for yourself. Okay? So, name cards siya sa US ang tawag. So, ito, I'll be showing you 2 images. Yung unang ginawa ni student. And then, yung pangalawa, yung improved na version na nung output niya when you have to answer these questions. What specific simple feedback do you imagine these students received? O yung na-receive ni Justin, okay, for that matter, that led Justin to improve his name card and make his name easier to read. So, you can share your responses down on our comment section. So, before we move on, you just have to ask yourselves, how can you as an educator do this in an efficient and manageable way as an educator? So, we can use, eto na tayo, yung tools natin for feedbacking. One is Microsoft Teams. Okay, you can actually write a private chat. You can also create posts for the general public, di ba, sa lahat ng members ng team na yon or ng channel na yon. You can also give praise. Meron doon sa Microsoft Teams, if you'll just explore it, meron po dyan na praise where you can give students a badge that can let the student know that good job yung ginawa niya and whatnot. Okay, so you can choose from a lot of options dyan sa praise na yan. It's like a sticker, pero yung sticker na yon actually contains a specific praise for your student related to the work he or she has done. So we also have assignments, ayan, and comments to the entire chat team or to the channel. Second, bumalik tayo. Second, we also have OneNote tools for feedback. Ayan, aside from Microsoft Teams, meron din tayong OneNote. Remember that OneNote is already integrated na po sa Microsoft Teams. So you don't have to install it. And you don't have to install it as well because Microsoft OneNote is already available on all our devices. Mapa Windows 8 pa yan, 8, 8.1, Windows 10. Meron na po tayo niyan. I'm not so sure sa Windows 7, pero if you're using Windows 7, I recommend that you upgrade already to Windows 10 because there are a lot of features available sa Windows 10 na bago na po na hindi natin kayang gawin sa Windows 7. So, yon. For OneNote, let's go back to OneNote. Ayan, we have student notebooks. That's teacher to student feedback. We also have a collaboration space where we can have student to student feedback. Ayan, because students have to hear feedback not only coming from us but coming from their fellow students as well. Ayan, we also have reviewing student work by using the class notebook. Remember na iba po ang class notebook sa normal or usual na notebook sa Microsoft Teams. Class notebook enables the teachers to monitor student progress and of course to add grades. We also have audio, video, inking, and stickers. OneNote rin po yung ginamit ko nung nag-demo ako, nag-simulation tayo noon sa remedial reading. Yung mismong pinaglagyan ng document ko na yon, nung material ko, that's OneNote. Ano siya, it's a digital notebook for your students and for your school staff as well. Second reflection question, choose one of the tools learned today. Whether that's OneNote or Microsoft Teams. How might you use that tool for feedback to students in your next learning session? You may share your responses down in our comment section or with your co-teachers at Baras National High School. So now that you know already what feedback tools you can use for your students so that you can give them real-time feedback, now we move on to the 4 best learning practices using Microsoft Teams. So the learning targets for this section, you have to drive your class meeting with a visual. You have to use channel posts effectively. You have to keep students in the classroom virtually, letting them stay in place at hindi sila lalabas, di ba? Kasi bawal lumabas, sabi ni Kim Chu. And make everything clear with assignment details, ayan, through the eyes of your student. First step for that, you have to drive your class meeting with a visual. So, how do you set the stage and prepare students for learning? So, syempre, kailangan visually appealing yung material natin para hindi mabore si student. So, ayan, you can add a sample slide like this. You can use Microsoft PowerPoint Designer or Design Ideas, di ba? Para in one click, you can just choose the design that you want. And kung may pictures pa yan, Microsoft PowerPoint Designer or Design Ideas can organize the content for you. Mag-a-add ka lang ng picture, ipapaste mo lang siya, and automatically may mag-generate na designs. All you have to do is to click and to choose. Okay? So, this is a sample slide. Ayan, so you can add a daily agenda. Actually, para tong yung notepads natin, yung where we add a daily agenda, yung things to do natin. We also have the learning objectives and we have the startup activity. And that's where your students can also mark na rin, di ba, which ones have they already accomplished. So, ayan, you can also add a countdown timer till the class starts. Ayan yung countdown timer natin. You can use timers that are widely available in the internet. Ako, I use Orzazek timer. I believe I shared that already dun sa previous training natin na may Google Classroom. That's, I think that's nung CBTL, but I would be happy to share it to you again if you need it. Ayan, there are also Pomodoro timers available if you need them as well. So, ayan. And if you're not a fan of downloading and installing software, if you're like a fan of yung mga online timers lang na ganyan, that's also nice, okay? You can also check out and share with your co-teachers ano yung mga online timers that you use. So, ayan. You can also get ready for an awesome class. Ayan, you can add symbols like this, di ba? Para hindi naman boring yung ano natin, yung slide. And also stock images like this, di ba? Na hindi ka makaka-violate ng copyright because stock images naman siya and they're meant for everybody to use. Yan. Just like Creative Commons as well. So, second tip is you can use channel posts effectively. Ayan, ask yourselves, can your students find your messages and announcements? O baka nahihirapan ba silang hanapin yon? Do they know where to go to ask questions? Meron bang isang lugar where you entertain questions or kahit saan na lang pwede mag-post, diba? So, it's very important that you set the boundaries, diba? I read in one social media post na the way you set boundaries, diba? The way you set boundaries also determines how people treat you. So, feeling ko that's applicable din dito dun sa pagkakaroon ng specific na lugar na where to ask questions, where to seek help, 'di ba? Where to look for files, 'di ba? So, kung ikaw mismo as teacher ay hindi organized sa pag-create nung specific rooms na yon kung saan dapat andun lang yung content, well, your students will get confused. If they're confused, 'di ba, they will not be able to engage themselves na sa learning. So, yon. Third question that you have to ask yourself, do they know where to go to meet me or to meet you as a teacher for virtual meetings, 'di ba? If the answers to all these questions are yes, then you're good to go as the teacher, di ba? So, ayan, di ba? So, I'll be also happy to share with you yung quick start guide natin or QS guide natin for Microsoft Teams so that you'll know the parts of the Microsoft Teams window. Hindi ko na lang siya elaborate in this session because our topic is on the better normal. How are you going to use Microsoft Teams to better deliver your content in the new normal? Ngayon, yung basics, will leave that to you to explore. Total, I have already taught you that yung basics nung nag-adapt ako sa inyo po nung April 2019, di ba? So, nung nag-adapt tayo dyan sa Baras Elementary School LRC, that's the first session I had with you. And then yung second session natin was when we had our summer INSET, yung joint INSET natin with Ma'am Noraline Carigo. So, yon. Again, I'll leave the basics to you to explore. You can watch training videos or mga tutorial videos ng Microsoft Education kasi po, nagbabago every time yung interface ng Microsoft Teams. Merong ilang icons na naiiba ng pwesto, pero if you will just get familiar with those icons, with those parts of that window, mapapaganan nyo na po yung intuition nyo sa pagpapaandar ng Microsoft Teams na yan. Because Microsoft Teams and all the other apps developed by Microsoft are intuitive. Okay? Kaya nyo siyang pagganahin and paandarin by just using your common sense, diba? And yung kutob natin na feeling ko nandito sa part na to. Okay? And I'm quite confident na you're good to go. Okay? So, moving on, here is one way where you can allow your students to find your messages, ayan, and to know where to ask questions or to know where to go to meet you for virtual meetings, ayan. So, this is how you can do announcements via Microsoft Teams. You can format that, you can add emojis, you can customize the colors, and yung font size so that you'll be sure na makakatch yung attention ni student. Ayan. So, you can also add emojis within the post itself, ayan, other than adding it doon sa mismong announcement title. Okay? And, meron din siyang option po where you can mark the announcement as important. Kapag mark the announcement as important, sa upper right portion ng announcement, merong lilitaw na na exclamation mark na kulay red para that would inform the student na important yung na yon, yung announcement na yon. Apart from that, you can also customize the announcement colors like this one. Ito, violet. Itong isa, powder blue. Itong isa, lilac. Diba? Tip number 3, you can keep your students in the classroom virtually and not allow them na lumabas, okay? Because you have to ask yourself, have you ever lost your students when you gave them independent work time? Baka nung binigyan mo sila ng independent work time, lalo na silang hindi bumalik, lalo na silang nawala sa align and ng kanya-kanya na, di ba? Just because you're not there to supervise them, di ba? And monitor their progress. So, ayan. With that, you can make use of these tabs and websites. Napakarami pong apps that you can make use of within Microsoft Teams. I'll be just zooming this in for you so that we'll see it better. Ayan. You can turn your favorite apps and files into tabs at the top of the channel. Not all apps can support private channels, so you have to take note of this. Okay, so this can be available in standard channels and in general channels. That's for one. So, yon, we have Beadle. I'm not familiar with all the other apps dito because ang dami na nila. The last time that I used Microsoft Teams was in September and hindi pa naman ganito kadami yon. So, ayan, you can just explore them on your own and look it up kung paano ginagamit yung bawat apps. So, that leads us to tip number 4, ayan, through the eyes of your students. Ask yourselves the question, do students independently complete their assignments or do they ask the assistance of older relatives, siblings, or do they depend on Google or Microsoft Bing? So here you can view the assignment through the eyes of a student by asking yourself, what am I required to do? Are the necessary resources included? When is it due? How do I submit my work or upload a file, or is there a file attached? How am I being assessed? Is there a rubric or points assigned? Diba? So, ask yourselves that question before the student gets to ask those to you. Diba? Unahan lang yan diba? You have to think ahead of your students. So, just like how we see it sa Google Classroom, meron din tayong student view sa Microsoft Teams. Ayan, student view, students can see their own progress and do their own tracking, di ba? Kasi some learners should be educated and dapat talaga they should be taught on how to monitor their own progress, di ba? Hindi yung lagi na lang dependent kay teacher na, oh, ma'am, ano pong kulang namin, di ba? Ano pa po yung hindi ko nasasubmit? Well, teacher students that they could do their self-monitoring, di ba? Ano na yung mga assignments na nasubmit na nila, ano yung hindi pa. Okay? And you can empower them to do that by teaching them about the student view. So now that we learned already how to provide effective feedback, ayan, in real-time feedback to our students, now we move on to the strategies to ensure engagement in meetings. Kasi may students talaga na aantukin sa meetings and meron na feeling nila hindi na sila connected dun sa topics that you are presenting to them. So ayan, these are just a few points to consider, but here are some strategies that will help you host better meetings. The learning targets for this section is that you can learn how to apply the best practice strategies for engagement during virtual meetings by, of course, identifying key elements of an engaging Teams meeting, using Teams meeting features to support learning, and translating classroom best practice virtual activities. So, ganun din siya, 'di ba? Pretty much you have to transform yung traditional natin to the digital sphere. And how do we do that? First, you have to know and to learn how to navigate MS Teams. And yun nga, meron tayong iba't ibang parts noon. First up is the me space, second is the we space, third are channels, and then fourth are tabs. Yung me space is actually where the student can be responsible with their own learning, okay? So ito na yung parts na nakikita nila and where they can create the assignments, where they can interact with other students in the team. Yung we space naman is more on the collaborative side, okay? It's not just interacting with other students within the teams or within the channel, but the we space allows for real-time online feedback, okay? They can work on a certain document all at the same time or on a certain artwork, di ba? And that online collaborative feedback will actually augment student learning for sure. So, second, ayan, also navigating Teams meetings, ayan, you can set or tweak meeting settings. You can tweak pa rin yung participant controls for audio and video. You can disable yung pag-share ng screen. Ayan, chat and reactions. You can also use applications during meetings like what I told you about Poly, di ba? Para hindi naman sobrang monotonous na lecture lang yung inyong call, di ba? Na lecture lang yung inyong learning session, di ba? So, these are the things that you have to remember before the meeting. Ayan, so you have to know your purpose. Ask yourselves, why are we meeting today? Who will attend the meeting? What materials will be shared? And how will participants in the meeting interact with each other? You can also work on the agenda, di ba? Ito talaga yung pinag-e-effortan and dito minsan tumatagal yung planning, di ba? An agenda will keep the meeting on track and help participants know what is expected of them, okay? When possible, you have to share the meeting agenda ahead of time so that everyone is prepared. Ayan. So, if possible lang naman, di ba? But yeah, like what we do in JCI as well, we share na rin agad yung meeting agenda before we start the meeting. So, yon. Moving on is we have the materials. Ayan. Meetings occur to share information, and that is why you have to attach the necessary materials before coming into the meeting. Just imagine na nasa meeting ka na, okay, whether virtual or face-to-face, tapos you have to go back to your office just to get the documents that you have to share. Di ba? Parang ang awkward nun. You have to prove and you have to show the meeting participants that you're ready. Di ba? And that is why you have to attach the necessary documents that will be needed before the meeting even starts. So think about what materials are necessary for the meeting and how the items can efficiently be shared with attendees. Ayan. So you can actually attach files na agad sa calendar so that when they receive the event invite in their email sa Outlook, they can download the materials ahead of time para pagdating nila ng meeting, they're already ready. Diba? So, yon. Moving on, you can already begin the meeting by, number 1, having a check-in or an icebreaker. So, common na naman to kahit sa face-to-face meetings natin, whether we do it for work, diba, as teachers, whether we do it for our students, or whether we do it for school events natin like meeting with parents and stakeholders and whatnot. You can also navigate the platform or Microsoft Teams for this matter. Ayan, meeting attendees may be new to the Teams meetings. Dedicate a moment at the beginning of the meeting to assess participant knowledge of Teams and provide brief instruction if needed. Kaya it's very important that you have needs assessment muna before using a digital tool for your students to use. Because if not, it would be more difficult on your end, di ba? Ang haba kasi nung time na kailangan mo to orient students on how to use this, on how they will navigate the platform, di ba? So you have to assess nga muna, okay? So, unlike if students are already familiar, di ba? You can provide muna materials for them to consume before you actually use the tool for serious sessions. Maybe you can do muna yung kumustahan, di ba? Para at least ma-familiar sila sa controls, ayan, and ma-navigate nila ng mabuti yung platform. Maybe you can also allot a time for technical orientation, di ba? To orient the students on which to press, on which to click, di ba? Just like yung ginagawa natin bago tayo mag-training sa district, di ba? Ito yung pinapa-implement ni Sir Pitts. Lagi tayong may technical orientation, di ba? So, it's like the meeting before the meeting that I'm talking about. So, yon. That can be done before we head over to the serious sessions where yung performance nila, di ba, yung participation can be graded. So, moreover, you have to let your students know or yung participants, di ba, yung meeting participants know about the norms and objectives. An engaging meeting has clear objectives that should be stated and posted at the beginning of the meeting. Norms should be established and reviewed briefly as part of the routine to assure all participants understand expectations and intended outcomes. Yon. So, no need naman na to explain this, but ito naman talaga ine-expect sa atin, di ba, if we hold and conduct meetings. Not only for students, but to parents as well, sa co-workers natin, and sa stakeholders. What you have to remember during the meeting? Ayan. So, during the meeting, you have to deliver information. Meetings become boring when information is delivered the same way over an extended period of time. That is why you have to avoid meeting fatigue and increase engagement by mixing up the delivery method for important content. So, this happens kapag live meetings, okay? So, to avoid meeting fatigue, you can invite a guest or an expert speaker. You can include video or audio elements. You can also have a mix of presentation and live demonstrations. You can also spotlight speaker for focus and check for understanding at natural pause points. Ayan, you can use a chat, you can use polls, and you can use forms, whichever you prefer. So you also have to ensure participant interaction. Engaging meetings must include frequent participant activity. Ideas for interaction in a virtual meeting include polls, chats, surveys, or raise hand, checks for understanding, movement, or brain breaks, refresh, and reflection time. So, moving on, ayan, so time management, one of my problems talaga. Timing is everything. Meetings should be paced slowly enough that the participants can keep up, but fast enough to make the learning interesting. Consider the following items. Ayan, number 1, participants' attention span. Next, you have to consider also yung previous or background knowledge. Ayan. And you can also use time management tools. For example, ayan, yung classroomscreen.com. I haven't tried this yet, but you might want to explore it on your own. We have Orzazek timer, yung ginagamit ko nga. And Pomodoro timer. Ang dami-dami niyan sa internet. So, yon. Next, ending the meeting. You can end the meeting by asking question and answers. Ayan, yung classic naman natin na Q&A. Furthermore, you can review the objectives, ayan, that you set prior to the meeting, di ba? And for your participants to achieve, di ba? Before ending the session. To close the meeting, ayan, meetings should always have a distinct end. Participants should leave the meeting with a sense of accomplishment. That's why you can give them badges for attending or certificates, ganyan. Next steps should be identified if additional meetings are required or the meeting repeats. Here are other resources that can help you organize and manage your meetings properly using the Microsoft Teams platform. Ayan, we have classroomscreen.com, Flipgrid, GoNoodle, John Spencer blog post. We have Padlet. We also have FetLabs simulations. So, yon. For the closing of this training, and I'd be happy to answer all of your questions if you can just send them over to Ma'am Arlene Robles so that she can send them to me. And you can also type in your questions sa comment section nitong YouTube video ko. Ayan. I will also give you additional resources. Ayan yung survey. Baka hindi na kasi I wasn't able to create that. But I'll be giving you certificates, ayan, through the MEC code that you have to redeem. With that, thank you very much for attending today's training. Please redeem your promo code at the Microsoft Educator community so that you can earn badges and certificates. Ayan, international po ito from Microsoft Education. So, ayan, let me head you over to the Microsoft Educator community. Again, marami po sa inyo ay members na nito because I have trained you noong pang April 2019 and then nung summer INSET natin in that same year. So, ayun. Ganun pa rin, education.microsoft.com, pretty much ganun pa rin yung interface niya so hindi na kayo mako-confuse, okay? So, create an account if you don't have one yet. Doon po sa mga bagong teachers and yung hindi pa members ito, I'd be happy to share with you as well natin how can you create your account step by step and redeem your achievement code. Ayan. Ang achievement code natin for this training is T-HTC 589920. Again, that's T-HTC 589920. Ayan, and you'll earn certificates from Microsoft Education. 3 po yung binigay kong course, okay? 3 yung courses na inaral natin ngayon and hindi nyo na siya kailangang i-take na kailangan pang mag-exam kayo sa Microsoft Educator community, but I'm giving them to you for free dahil kayo po ay umattend ng training ko today. Okay? So please redeem your achievement code. Ayan, this is a plus already for you. Do not forget to register for free sa ating Microsoft Educator community for a whole lot of resources that you can explore. Ayan, and for news, updates, and contests and announcements, you can like Microsoft Education Philippines, ayan, through their official Facebook page.